sharing durian ASEAN.
ASEAN Dailies. First and the foremost news from Southeast Asia.
Hey, this is Arlene.
Hi, this is Gowri.
And of course, you are with us on our ASEAN Daily, where we bring you news from Southeast Asia. First off, we give you daily updates on the 1MDB crisis. So, the latest one is the Sarawak Report article on the Prime Minister Najib and 1MDB are very good fiction. This is according to former journalist of Sarawak Report.
That's right, and he also said that the alleged designer was working part-time with the Bruno Mansur Fund, BMF, and purportedly faked the documents on the instructions of the Sarawak Report editor Claire Rucastle-Brown to discredit the Prime Minister Najib Razak and 1MDB. And it's very interesting because Sarawak Report has also been blocked by the government, and as of today it's actually still blocked and you cannot access the website.
It's interesting to see the development of the 1MDB have turned from the discussion on how large the sum of debt is to scandals after scandals of either fake documentation or perpetrator coming in from nowhere. And the latest two Sarawak Report articles about how Jolo was using Petro Saudi as a front to siphon billions out of 1MDB, as well as the article Riza and Jolo facing questions over bribery and tax evasion. To this guy, Lester Melanyi, which was the former Sarawak Report journalist, said that it is a very good fiction.
Well, whether it's a good fiction or not, there's been a lot of reports surfacing about 1MDB, of course, not just by the Sarawak Report, but we also have the Wall Street Journal. We also had the Financial Daily, who came out yesterday with some really strong evidence, and they also had a flow chart, a very detailed flow chart on how Petro Saudi and Jolo sort of used 1MDB to launder all this money. And the editor even said that this could be our last day at the newspaper because of the kind of news that we're reporting, but they felt like they had to...
It's an obligation for them.
To let people know the truth as a media investigating into this matter. And there's been so many different versions of the story, so many different medias coming out with documents, evidences and all. But as far as our government is concerned, I think it's still fiction because no one has really come up and say anything, especially our Prime Minister.
Mm-hmm. Prime Minister is one thing, but I want to add on the Edge Financial Daily. They would not be reporting the 1MDB case because they would be handing down all their reports to the authority for further investigation. Just to continue on what the former Sarawak Report journalist Lester Melanyi had said. He said that he met with Swiss national Xavier Andrea Justo in London 2 or 3 times between 2012 and 2013 and believed that the former Petro Saudi executive did not tamper with any of the documents he has alleged stolen from him, his then employer, which is the Sarawak Report. And what is interesting is he is also affirming that 2 opposition leaders are in fact involved in the alleged mission to criminalize Datuk Sri Najib Tun Razak and 1MDB.
And the Sarawak Report editor said that Melanyi is actually making it all up. And of course, we also have our Democratic Action Party MP, Tony Phua, who has been passionate about 1MDB from the start. And he was also one of the key figures
Exposing
this whole 1MDB scandal. And his lawyer said that they will be issuing a letter of demand against Melani to retract and apologize for his baseless accusation. So despite numerous evidence that's been coming out, well, so far there has been no I would say admitting from any party. It's still pointing fingers, going round and round, and the sad part is probably a lot of Malaysians who are outside the urban areas are not even aware, or they don't really know who to believe or what's really happening with the whole 1MDB issue. So I think it goes back to what the media is reporting and unveiling all this new evidence and whatnot, trying to bring out the truth to the public, and we're still waiting for our Prime Minister.
And the problem is because all of the expose are now with the media rather than with the investigation team. Of course, Malaysian authority is working towards it, but the people are left in the dark, and the only thing that they can get, I'm talking about informations, is from the media. So I think the media currently they hold the greatest authority in providing the most updated and hopefully news that are well investigated. Good journalism definitely hold much more substance right now for the Malaysian media on the case of 1MDB. On the other hand, besides the media, another area that is prone to, I would say, corruption, of course, is political institution, and in this case political parties. This is based on survey that find political parties are the most corrupted institutions in Malaysia.
That's right, and this was done by Transparency International Malaysia. Their latest Malaysian Corruption Barometer 2014 survey found that 45% of Malaysian respondents ranked political parties as the most corrupt among other 6 key institutions in Malaysia. And the close second one was actually the police force, which 42% thought was corrupted, followed by public civil servants, judiciary, parliament, legislature, and finally the business and private sector.
Are you surprised with the result?
Not quite. I think this would be the response of an average Malaysian if you were to talk to them. I think the way that it's ranked, it's not even surprising that the police were actually second on the most corrupt list, because there's been, I think, so many cases of even death in custody and a lot of scandal that surfaced, and a lot of I would say double standards also happening. It's not surprising that this is how the Malaysians feel about our political parties and the police force even, which is quite sad that we don't trust our own police.
Another sad thing is, to me personally, I think business and private sector, they should hold greater accountability, especially businesses are being seen as, you know, the better third force besides the rakyat, of course. What Transparency International Malaysia is calling is for the reform, especially when they are talking about political parties here, in terms of political financing. When we talk about political parties in Malaysia, we seldom talk about what is happening behind the door, and a lot of what is happening behind the door is due to political financing. We don't know which political party are getting money from where, how they get their campaigns funded, and these are issues of transparency and accountability to the rakyat that each political parties in Malaysia need to be accountable of.
And I guess one of the main issue here is also about political funding, which PM Najib had spoken about, saying that it should be regulated for parties and putting it forward as a joint task force for the ruling government and opposition. But of course, so far nothing really has materialized, according to Transparency International Malaysia, who did the follow-up on what our Prime Minister said.
Again, promises over another promise. Well, to be very frank, Malaysian politics has always been questionable because of not just political funding, but also because people have put less and less trust in terms of how things have been shaping forward. Many times when people are being promised one thing, they get another thing, and a lot of people were really disappointed with the GST, high cost of living, with the increase of petrol prices. These are things that are bread and butter, and I think the government holds the greatest accountability.
You have a very good point there for all the things that you mentioned when it comes to GST or petrol prices or whatever it is. Every time that the government says that it's not going to happen, and that's when it happens. So when they said, GST will not increase any prices, but it did, and the petrol prices will not go up anymore, but it did. So whatever that is being said as of now, we can just start interpreting it as the opposite, because it never materializes the way that it should.
Yeah. On the other hand, good news for Sarawak. Well, I think it's a good news to remember back history. Do you know what will be happening tomorrow, 22nd of July?
What will be happening tomorrow?
So, apparently there's this day called Sarawak Independence Day, which unfortunately I don't think any of us ever learned in our history book. But it's a historic moment to see that Yang di-Pertua Negeri Tun Abdul Taib Mahmud and Chief Minister Tan Sri Adenan Satim will be attending a special event in Sarawak to commemorate Sarawak Independence Day, which falls on 22nd of July at the State Assembly Building in Petra Jaya.
And this event will be a special rendition relating to the historic moment, followed by a speech by Adenan, of course. And so happened that in July 22nd, back in 1963, the last governor of the British government, who was Sir Alexander Waddell, left the Astana, which was his residence, and boarded a white sampan to cross to the Sarawak River while handing over the government of Sarawak to its own people. So that is quite a historic moment for the people in Sarawak, and they remember it very clearly till today.
It's quite obvious on that day itself, the Union Jack was lowered for the last time. Was also the day that the first state cabinet meeting, presided by the first Chief Minister Datuk Stephen Kalong Ningkan, was held. Later on, in September 16, 1963, Sarawak joined Sabah, Malaya and Singapore to form Malaysia that we know today.
That's right.
So anyway, we'll take one short break. When we return, we will discuss more on South China Sea as well as what is happening in our neighboring countries, Myanmar.
ASEAN Dailies. First and the foremost news from Southeast Asia.
Hey, this is Arlene.
Hi, this is Gowri.
And of course, you're still with us on our ASEAN Daily. And talking about the South China Sea, do you know that China has responded to the US on the provocations relating to the South China Sea?
That sounds like a very positive thing, something that we've been waiting to hear for a very long time.
Actually, it's not. It's kind of scary if you look at the news itself.
Okay, maybe you can tell us about the scary part. How has China responded actually towards the South China Sea?
See, the US SWIFT, he mentioned that the US forces are well prepared for unexpected events in the disputed maritime zone, of course, the South China Sea. And because of this, China is stepping up preparation for potential disputes in the that maritime area after the commander of the US Pacific Fleet engaged in a surveillance flight last Saturday. And what they are doing is China state-run media outlet Global Times is calling the act itself provocation.
Right, and Beijing's criticism of the US commander was followed by a footage from China's television network, CCTV, which showed its first large-scale, multi-level amphibious landing exercise involving ships, soldiers, helicopters in an unidentified location. Now I get the scary part of China's reaction, because what we were hoping for was more of a diplomatic solution, but China is going more on the old school cool way, just trying to intimidate the other countries even more by showing off how powerful they are.
And this is not the first time they done this. Of course, with Taiwan, numerous times in different period, they have show off, quote unquote, show off their military might, showing a sign to the US to not meddle with the internal affairs in China. And I can see where China is heading. I think when it comes to the US, China is pretty harsh, and they will not back down on any call for negotiation. And in fact, Beijing has neither complied with Washington's call to abandon their ambition to get South China Sea, as well as responded to Manila's request to resolve it through the International Tribunal in the United Nations.
And this will probably also provoke Philippines to probably come up with more spend more on their military equipment and increase their frigates or guns and rifles, trying to intimidate China back in the process, because it doesn't seem like they're going to reach any amicable solution through dialogue and whatnot. And they are now resorting to just intimidating each other, and by showing who can be more powerful.
On the other hand, looking at China's neighbor, Myanmar, they are still facing the harsh reality that the election might not be that fair, the upcoming election on November 8th. The United States have issued a statement welcoming the announcement of the Union Election Commission announcement that general election will be held on that particular date. But fair election is still not guaranteed.
That's right. And according to the statement, the U.S. remains committed to, of course, supporting Myanmar, supporting the elections, supporting the holding of the credible, transparent, inclusive elections, as they call it, that will hopefully reflect the will of the Myanmar people. And also, this is supposed to be an important marker in the country's democratic transition. But there are also, like you mentioned, fair election is not guaranteed, and there are also a lot of reasons to doubt that things will actually go smoothly during the elections. There's still a lot of concerns among the local people of Myanmar, and there's also still clashes between different ethnic groups, and they have yet to solve their problems through what they want here is a peaceful negotiation, but that's not quite happening yet.
And of course, moreover than that, the U.S. Embassy in Yangon also has issued a statement on July 15 saying that U.S. is definitely concerned on the continued reports and arrests of excessive prison terms handed over to peaceful protesters under Article 18 of the Peaceful Assembly and Processions Act. This is definitely didn't go gel well with a lot of the activists in Myanmar. Free exercise of these rights will be particularly important during the upcoming election seasons as measure of the election's transparency. I personally agree with the US. I think a lot of people are still concerned whether election is fair or not. But the view might be different according to Myanmar's commander-in-chief, or probably the strongest person in a rare BBC interview that Min Aung Hlaing gave regarding on the military position on the election, as well as different other issues relating to their governance.
So he tells the BBC that the military will not step back from politics until a peace deal has been reached between the country's ethnic armed groups, but it will respect the results of the forthcoming general election if the opposition wins. So as much as that is promising, we still don't know if it's actually possible for them to reach a peace deal between the armed groups in the countries. We know that Myanmar has hundreds of different ethnic groups in the country, and it's not easy to come to a consensus when we talk about all these different ethnic groups coming together, especially speaking of armed force in this case. And apparently Min Aung Hlaing also has more than 200,000 likes on Facebook, and he provides updates ranging from which aircraft has been purchased, which social projects he's visited, and also how to reconnect the people to the army in Myanmar.
We call it charm offensive measure.
Right. That's the term
I actually like it. He's so good with words. Oh, I think he is.
Yeah.
But the fact that he got 220,000 likes in Facebook, I think I'm quite envying him right now.
In terms of your own page or like Durian ASEAN?
I think both. How does it do it? I'm sure it's not like him buying the likes, right? Because nowadays you can actually buy likes.
That's right. Well, but he is a strong man, so maybe he has that much supporters or followers who want to hear what he has to say as well.
And about fair election, he believed that the election will be free and fair. But as long as the political parties play by the rules of Myanmar's so-called disciplined democracy, where they would carefully give the limited space for debate and political activity as long as they respect the hierarchy of power in Myanmar. And I think that's dangerous, because then you would still, allow the military to run the country, maybe as the puppet master, rather than and all the actors become puppets rather than they control their own fate, their own future fate of the Myanmar's democracy. And another area that I think is a possible backwards to Myanmar is he might actually run for presidency.
Really?
Yeah, he said it so.
Well, he seems to be popular in Myanmar anyway, and of course we do also have another favorite candidate, who is Aung San Suu Kyi, who has actually decided to run for president. And I think the biggest concern here, you were mentioning earlier about the disciplined democracy, which will be a limited space for debate, which means that there won't be much of a difference anyway. And another thing that we're concerned about is, of course, in terms of human rights, what's going to happen to the Rohingya. And there are still so many unanswered questions among people in Myanmar as well. So if Min Aung can actually come up with something concrete, why not? He could be a favorite presidential candidate in Myanmar.
So yeah, keep our finger crossed for Aung San Suu Kyi. Hopefully that she would be the eventual winner, but we never know. Anything can happen in Myanmar's politics. We'll take another short break. When we return, we'll discuss on the economic aspect of Southeast Asia.
ASEAN Dailies. First and the foremost news from Southeast Asia.
Hey, you're back with me, Arlene.
Hi, this is Gowri.
And of course, you are with us at ASEAN Daily. So now, regarding on economy, do you know that Singapore is actually quite worried about their economy? They want to have less unskilled foreign labor and instead focus more on rising productivity, and this means they want to move up the value chain.
Right, it's not really that much of a surprise because last week actually there was a news saying that Singapore could actually hit into recession, which was quite shocking because it has always been one of the strongest countries economically in this region. And for Singapore to actually worry about the economy, I think for the rest of us it would be even a much worse situation for us to worry about. And Singapore, pretty much like Malaysia, also depend heavily on migrant workers who are there to actually help with the productivity of the country. So I think it makes sense why they want to rely less on unskilled foreign labor and focus more on the country itself, because foreign labor is not something that I think is consistent. I mean, they come in because they want a job, but then they can leave anytime they want. And if there is a huge migration of these foreign laborers to actually leave the country, and there would just be a whole lot of unsettled or unfinished projects that the Singaporeans will have to deal with.
I think what he also mentioned, I'm talking about Deputy Prime Minister Teo Chee Hean, is to not focus too much on unskilled foreign labor, but on skilled labor. And skilled labor can be foreign, can be local. But of course, in the larger picture, Singapore's proximity in the region puts it in the center of an ocean of opportunity. It must seize this opportunity by moving up the value chain, especially with the establishment of the ASEAN Economic Community. And because of this, I think the best way forward is of course to provide as much skills trainings to locals and foreigners as possible to attract more talented people. And one of these initiatives could be Skill Future.
And apart from that, they are also looking to be more customer oriented, because at the end of the day, of course, goes back to the consumer and their purchasing power. And most of these consumer oriented firms will actually be keen to gain compelling consumer insights, trying to innovate, creating new products, also improve on their services to meet the growing regional needs, like what you mentioned with the establishment of the ASEAN Economic Community, which will be happening. It's already happening and is supposed to have been achieved by December end of this year. And they are looking at that on how they can tap into the growing regional needs, as well as hire people with the right skills, knowledge and industry experience to expand their business.
I would say Singapore, unlike other Southeast Asian countries, definitely have the right environment to attract these skilled laborers. On the other hand, talking about labor, well, not exactly labor, but about spending, the Philippines, in fact, has proposed a record of 25 billion peso of defense spending for next year. It is proposing to spend the money to purchase frigates, surveillance planes and radars to improve surveillance and detection in the disputed West Philippine Sea or South China Sea.
So there you have it, China. Philippines is coming to get you. They are already looking to increase their military budget, and that's already a sign of how they are getting worried about how China is behaving of recently. And of course, this funds is to modernize the military. It's also part of President Aquino's 3 trillion peso plan budget bill in 2016, which will be his last year in the office. And of course, he's not running for a second term. And this budget proposal is actually 15.1% more than the current appropriation of 2.6 trillion pesos, according to the Budget and Management Secretary Florencio Abad. And he also said that 80% of this proposed government spending will be eaten up by forward estimates of the cost of ongoing programs and projects. So it seems that they are all geared up to really spend this record budget on their military modernization.
I suppose they will get the excess funding by the US. You never know. Just a speculation, but definitely the government proposed budget, including the defense spending plan, would be submitted to the Congress next week after the president delivers his last State of the Nation address on July 27. So on the other hand, regarding on economy, besides the South China Sea, another area is about the 27 billion in loans from Japan, which has go mostly unnoticed in China.
That's
Did you
right.
know about it?
Exactly. And not a lot of people know that China, although it is the world's second largest economy, surpassing Japan, but it was actually Japan who helped to build China and most of their infrastructures, which is not really recognized or not really mentioned in China. Japan is also not given the recognition for the amount of help or financial aid that they have given to China.
So Japan has provided a total of 3.3 trillion yen or 27 billion US dollar in loans, and the money has been spent on improving large-scale infrastructure in China, such as airports and ports. But these arrangements are not well known among the Chinese public. They think it's easy money, but no, it's the Japanese that is their father.
Exactly. Almost like their backbone, their economic backbone. And part of the construction also actually went to the Shanghai Pudong International Airport, which was financed with yen loans, as well as 2 Japanese companies who submitted basic planning research reports to the Shanghai city government. And I think Japan is also not happy because they have been waiting for some recognition, but because of the relationship between the two countries that has become worse over the years, there was really not any time or any opportunity for China to show its appreciation towards Japan. And they were also not happy that the Chinese foreign minister speak as if Japan was not really a big deal in China's development.
In fact, relations has been worsened in recent years and increased harder to express gratitude from the Chinese side. It sounds like a kid that is, ungrateful to the father. And in this case, the father would be the father's pocket money, which is Japan.
Exactly. Because it's like just withdrawing your money from the ATM machine when you need, and then you just forget about it, which is why Japan is not quite happy, and I think this doesn't help the relationship between China and Japan either.
And relating to building relationship, while Japan is investing in China, China is in fact investing in Vietnam. China firms to build $1.75 billion power plant in Vietnam.
And this construction of the 1200 megawatt power plant began on Saturday in the province of Binh Thuan, and its first generator is scheduled to start operation in December 2018. The second generator will be operational in June 2019, and this will help to reduce blackouts in Vietnam's southern region, which is quite prone to blackouts because of the lack of access to electricity.
So the two firms, Chinese energy firm China Southern Power's Grid and China Power International Development Corporation, has in fact joined forces on the coal-fired power plant in southern Vietnam. The government has said that power plants in the country's central and southern regions would have to use imported coal, and that would probably comes mostly from Indonesia and Australia, which is one of the biggest coal producer.
And Vietnam has also actually been looking to cut their coal exports to save their fossil fuel for thermal power plants, because it is as of now still struggling to meet the energy demands in the country, especially in terms of economy. They are still struggling. Their projected growth was about 6.2%. I don't think that they are meeting that. So because of that, they have to actually cut down on coal exports and focus on more environmental friendly energy. Look for alternative sources in order to meet the demands in the country.
And we'll take another short break, and we will continue with socio-cultural news from Southeast Asia.
ASEAN Dailies. First and the foremost news from Southeast Asia.
Hey, this is Arlene.
Hello, this is Gowri.
And of course, you're still with us. So, talking about magic. Gowri, do you believe in magic?
I do believe in magic.
What?
Everything's so magic.
Well, you're not alone, Gowri. Well, apparently people in Southeast Asia, a lot of us are still believers of spirit mediums. And I think there's nothing wrong with it. And in fact, it's part of the Southeast Asian tradition. I remember back during the case of the MH370, remember the coconut
Of course.
Bomo?
Who forgets that?
I know a lot of people are ridiculing him. Of course, his action doesn't make sense in our modern society. But I do believe that you shouldn't use your own perspective to judge other people's culture, regardless how ridiculous you think it is. And and I think this one guy from the US, his name is Rion Patterson, a Chicago-based writer, has been working as a journalist in Cambodia, while last year put together a Kickstarter campaign to travel around Cambodia and document as many practitioners of magic as possible.
And the result of this trip will be a multimedia book called Vanishing Act, a glimpse into Cambodia's world of magic. I think this is really interesting because, like you were saying, it's such a modern world and we have become evolved and we are so different. But it's great that somebody is trying to dig deep into the magic that's been lost and trying to actually document that. And despite much of the modernization, like you were still mentioning, Cambodia actually still holds on to its traditions pretty strongly, and a lot of them still believe in spirits, and there are still a lot of practitioners of magic who actually use spirits to give advice or help to heal mental illness among other melodies.
It reminds me of Harry Potter. Series. I think that's the reason why kids nowadays, adults as well, they like films that have a sense of mystery and magic. I think the same goes with people who believe in who have strong roots and interest in tradition. And the reason for these spirit mediums is because for Cambodia, you know the history of its Khmer Rouge past. Because of that, they need to talk about their sufferings, but at the same time they don't have a strong infrastructure for counseling and psychology, and these spirit mediums actually help people to talk about their daily lives.
I mean, this thing has been around for the longest time, and of course whatever that we have now in the modern day in terms of treatment or counseling, psychology for the mental illness patients, I believe that it all was derived from what was done before, what was practiced thousands of years ago, that became a basis for what we have today. And the advice are actually very practical and common sense, and it comes from a place of authority, which is why it became very reliable. And I am really looking forward to this.
So Gowri, what magic that do you believe?
Well, we actually have a similar traditional art in Malaysia, which is called Main Puteri, which is also involves spirits, where somebody will get into a trance and also help to give advice to help heal these mental patients. So we're really not all that different, and we do have a lot of magic here as well.
And because of that, I think hopefully one day we will have like a guidebook to Southeast Asia's magic.
You know, that could be my PhD thesis. Who knows?
Awesome. So on the other hand, from magic to football, do you know that a lot of underage African footballers are being trafficked to Laos?
That is kind of shocking for me. I didn't know that Laos was interested in African football players.
And so much coming from Gowri, who is a football enthusiast.
Exactly. And apparently there are 6 minors who are still with the top Laos side, Champasa United, after it imported 23 underage players from West Africa to its unregistered football academy back in February.
This is the experience of one 14-year-old player, Librias Kenseli Kamara. He said that he was forced into signing a 6-year deal with a promise of salary and accommodation, but instead he was never paid and have to sleep on the floor of the club's stadium.
And this is also in violation of FIFA's regulation, which prohibits the movement of players to a foreign club or academy until they are at least 18. They have to be trained in their home ground, in their own youth academy stadium. And because of that, they've actually called on FIFA to take action against Laos Football Federation.
But so far, nothing has been made concrete yet in terms of what FIFA has, the statement from FIFA on this particular issue. An NGO called Culture Food Solidaire estimated that 15,000 teenage footballers are moved out of West Africa every year, many of them illegally. Can you see that FIFA is dwell into scandals after scandals, and this time, it cannot even take care of minors?
I think so. I think FIFA has deviated so much from its original course, original objectives, that it's also become so much about money and corruption that it's probably no longer about football anymore, and they do have a lot of work to do. I think they're also having another election to elect a new president, and hopefully the next guy that comes in will help to turn things around.
The thing about FIFA is the authority when it comes to football, and I think a lot of people look up to FIFA to be the ones that would be able to set a certain ethics and standard in terms of footballing, and I hope that FIFA would be able to continue that tradition instead of deviating from, to the way that they are facing right now. That's all for our news today.
And if you want to give us any comments or feedbacks, you can do so on our Facebook page, or you can also tweet us at Durian ASEAN. Also follow us on Instagram and subscribe to our YouTube channel for all the daily podcasts.